I'm storyteller and author Pleasant Despain, and you have a wonderful imagination. Welcome to Pleasant Journeys. My story for today is called Calamity Jane. It's found in my American collection, Sweet Land of Story 36, American Tales to Tell. Back in 1876, hordes of prospectors arrived in Deadwood, South Dakota, and among them was Martha Jane Canary. She was born in 1830 in Wyoming, but unfortunately her parents had been killed by the time she was 2 years old, so she was taken to Fort Laramie and raised by a sergeant and his wife. And as a child, she ran wild, and that's when folks started calling her Calamity Jane. Now, Calamity learned to ride and hunt and shoot with the best of them. She learned to fight when necessary. She wore buckskins. She chewed tobacco, she drank hard liquor, and she never backed down from a man. She rode for the Pony Express for a while, and then she was hired to be a guide for General George Custer. Now, she was married twice in her life, but as she said, the only man she truly loved was Wild Bill Hickok. Now, Calamity put her extraordinary energy to good use most of the time. There was a plague in 1876. Smallpox came to Deadwood, and it was devastating. Now, she had no nurse's training, but several men came down with smallpox, and there were very few nurses. They called for a doctor named Babcock to come and help. But by the time he arrived, well, there were 6 men that they isolated. They put them into one cabin, and there was no one to care for them except Calamity. And when Dr. Babcock finally arrived, he told her she should probably get out of the cabin because she was likely to come down with the disease. And she said, "These men are too weak. They can't even get a drink of water for themselves. If there is no one to help, well, I'm going to stay." And she did. After about 2 months, 2 of the men had died, but 4 survived. And they said it was due to Calamity and her big heart. There was another time in Deadwood that a boy came down with mountain fever, and there were no cures. They thought he was going to die, and Calamity was helping to care for him, and he said, "Please, all I want is a big sour pickle." The doctor at that time said, "No, it'll probably kill him." Calamity said, "Well, what have we got to lose? He's probably going to die anyway." So she went and got a big sour pickle, which the boy ate. And he ultimately survived. And he said later in his life, the only reason was because of Calamity and that sour pickle. Now, Calamity was a betting woman as well, and she devised one of the strangest horse races ever run in South Dakota. She was sitting on the veranda of a saloon with her horse tied there at the bar, and a young man arrived on a beautiful animal, and he looked over at her horse. Her horse was named Jim, and he said, "I think my horse is faster than yours. I think my horse could beat yours in a race." She said, "Really? Well, stranger, why don't you put your money where your mouth is?" She said, I'll bet you $100 that my horse is faster than yours. You're on, he said. Oh, she said, but wait, I get to set the rules of the race. He agreed, and they both put $100 into the sheriff's pocket to hold for the winner, whoever that might be. And then she laid out the rules for the race. She said, we're going to race to the far end of town and then start at the first saloon we see. Now each horse will have to carry us into the saloon and we'll have a drink. And we'll do that with all 11 saloons here in Deadwood. And whoever arrives at the last saloon with the last drink is the winner, and winner take all. What he didn't know is that she had trained her horse to go up the step or two into the saloon and right up to the bar. And the horse was kind of famous in Deadwood because it learned how to drink beer from a bottle. She won many, many free drinks because of this. Well, the race started and off they went. And she won that race by 4 saloons and 5 drinks. When Calamity was 50 years old, she died up at a mining camp above Deadwood. The funeral was held in a small Methodist church, and every seat was occupied. The minister went on and on about her many virtues. He didn't mention any of her faults. And she said that she wanted to be buried next to Wild Bill Hickok, and so she was. And a couple of years later, some residents of Deadwood, they saw a man who was sitting by her grave, and he was crying. And they asked him, well, how did you know Calamity? And he sniffed and said, well, I was her first husband. She was the kindest woman I have ever known. Well, there ends my story. It's great to read and hear about such a strong and powerful Western woman. I hope you liked it. And if you'd be so kind as to give a like to this story, perhaps subscribe, help this channel grow, I would really appreciate it. If you leave a comment, I will be sure to respond. And down below, you'll find my website. And on my website, all of my books are listed with a direct link to Amazon.com. Thank you so much. There are so many stories yet to tell. Another story to tell next week.